So I'll be giving this talk on ICU outbreak. How do I manage? So this talk I gave it on 15 December 2019 in Vizag in Reflect meeting. So the topics that I would be covering is background of outbreak and a bit of a definition, spread by direct or indirect contact, environmental surface contamination, water contamination, droplet and airborne spread, and how do we go about investigating the outbreak. And how do we go about preventing outbreak and controlling it. So there are around 7 steps, and I'll talk about 8 specific outbreaks that have happened worldwide and the measures the countries have taken to mitigate the outbreak and take home message. So when we look at healthcare associated infections and these infections causing outbreak, it could be bacterial infection, it could be viral infection, or it could be fungal infections. And why is this important? Because any outbreak has a direct bearing on increasing the morbidity, increasing the mortality, and increasing the cost to the patient and the organizations. And it is a burden to the organizations with regards to resource utilization, because there will be a lot of resources that need to be put in place to circumvent this outbreak. And what this will all lead to in many instances is closure of ICU. The reason is when there is an outbreak which is very significant, then it does mandate closure of ICU to contain it. And outbreaks can happen within ICU, or it can happen from an admission of a patient from another hospital where outbreak may have happened, or the patient may be transferred from another unit because of whatever outbreak that may have happened. And outbreak can happen because of international travelers who carry diseases from one region to another and they get admitted to ICU. And these outbreaks can be within the hospital or can happen outside the hospital. And there is something called pseudo outbreaks also that one should be able to recognize and identify. So now coming to what is the definition of outbreak. So the definition of outbreak is where you know the baseline rate of the disease and there is increase in number of diseases more than the expected number. So that expected number or the baseline rate is something that clinician should be sensitized to. So where there is increase in the number of diseases more than the expected number, and this outbreak can involve the patient and the staff treating the patient clustered in space and time. So which means break the outbreak will be defined by the space in which it occurs and the timeline in which it occurs, and the number is more than the baseline rate. So that's the definition. And even single outbreak, also single patient having a disease also can qualify as outbreak, especially in instances like VRSA or Ebola, which means to say if there is a rare disease which is not expected in that region, if it arises, suppose if we have a case of Nipah or Ebola virus or VRSA is not very common. So if you have vancomycin resistant staph aureus, then it has to be called as an outbreak, because this is something which never happens, and if it is identified, that has to be called as an outbreak. So let's move to the what are the commonest routes of spread. I think as we all know, how much ever literature you go through, the commonest mode of spread, which is direct and indirect, is always the hands of the personnel. It can be hands of the patient, it can be hands of the visiting personnel, it can be hands of the healthcare professional delivering the care. And the reasons are multitude. So the most important reason is the hand hygiene. So the improper hand hygiene or hand sanitization is a very common reason, or inadequate decontamination of the environment. So when there is inadequate cleaning of the environmental surfaces, so that also is a common cause of outbreak, or inappropriate isolation or inadequate isolation of the patients who may have infections which has a potential to create an outbreak is also one of the common causes. And the stress within the employees can be reasons. So the simplest reason one would think of is decreased patient nursing ratio. This puts in tremendous stress to the nursing professional, and this can lead to the outbreak. and lack of communication. So this is also extremely important because once outbreak is identified or once a patient is recognized to have an infection that can cause potential outbreak, this has to be adequately communicated by the top leadership to the people under. So it has to percolate at every level that a potential outbreak is possible and due precautions have to be taken. And most importantly, in India, I would cite the nurse patient ratio can be a very important reason for outbreak. And we know, I think we have seen this cartoon circulating in WhatsApp. So, hands does remain a very important sort of a tool or a conduit for outbreaks to happen. And this applies within ICU and even in the community. As you see, there are 124 million bacterial colony sort of which can get transmitted from one individual to another by hand. So best is to have a least hand contact. So let's move to environmental surface contamination. Now this is a typical ICU, and as you see these areas highlighted, so any surface surrounding an isolation or surrounding the ICU bed can be a potential source of contamination. So it could be sinks, it could be the bed, it could be the bed rails, it could be the monitor, it could be side table. So any surface in the proximity of an ICU patient can be a potential source of environmental contamination. And there are certain bacteria or viruses which can be present on the surface for a very prolonged period of time, and they can be immune to certain decontamination measures also. So the typical organisms that can remain on the surface for a very long time are MDR, multi-drug resistant bacteria, or Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome coronavirus, and you have Candida which can remain on the surface for a very long time. Then you have Mycobacteria species which can remain on the surface for a very long time, and even Ebola is found to remain on the surface for a very long time. And when there was a Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, MERS, coronavirus outbreak, the outbreaks happened in three countries. So, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Korea. And in Korea, in South Korea, when the outbreak happened, they found coronavirus was predominantly present on the doorknobs, elevators, and the bed railings. So, this is the areas where they found it to have been colonized. And another mode of spread is once the patient is discharged from an isolation with a potential infection which could cause outbreak, any new patient who gets admitted into the same space, if it is not properly decontaminated, can be a source for outbreak. So this was reported in the study from the UK. So let's look into, so we finished our direct or indirect contact, environmental contamination, and water contamination. So what are the bugs that are notorious to cause water contamination? Pseudomonas is a common bug which can contaminate the water. Acinetobacter is another bug which can contaminate water. Legionella is another bacteria. And Aspergillus can contaminate the water. Serratia can contaminate the water. Mucor can contaminate the water, and norovirus. So these are some of the bacteria, virus, and fungi which can contaminate the water. And water acts as a reservoir. And the outbreak with water contamination can happen either by direct contact with water or by aerosol, because water can cause droplets, and if this is inhaled, and this also can lead to outbreak. And water contamination can happen in the taps that the personnel can come in contact with, or the sinks which are used by the healthcare personnel or the patient, which can get contaminated. The faucets which patients use can become a source of contamination, and the RO units and the dialysis units. I think they are because there is water involved in dialysis, and this can be potential sites of outbreak and contamination. And they have found in this study from Switzerland, there are two studies reported with heater cooler device. I think heater cooler device is known to cause outbreak with Mycobacteria chimeria. And this was found, there was one outbreak which is reported in cardiothoracic units where heater cooler devices are used. So when there is heater cooler units, you have to be guarded about potential outbreaks due to this Mycobacteria chimeria. So now we'll move to the droplet and airborne spread. So the airborne spread can happen in a vicinity of 6 to 10 feet with droplets more than 5 micron. So and due precautions have to be taken. Some of the bugs that can cause droplet spread is Bordetella, H. influenza, pneumonia, mycoplasma pneumonia, meningitis, Neisseria meningitis, adeno, and SARS. So this can all spread through droplet infection. And one of the risks for droplet infection in the community is overcrowding and movement of people from one place to another. So limiting the transport may be one sort of intervention to curtail the spread with droplet infection. And this typical Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, coronavirus, which caused outbreaks, typically happened because of overcrowding and movement of patients from one place to another. And that happened in Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and United Arab Emirates. So these outbreaks happened. So now we'll move to the next sort of a section, outbreak investigations. How do we investigate outbreak? I think the first person who should be sensitized to outbreak investigation is a medical personnel or a doctor, because he would understand what are the baseline rate of the cases that happen in his unit. And if there is an unusual case that has been detected in ICU, I think that should raise the antenna for the doctor, considering that there is a potential outbreak. Or if there is a typical resistance pattern being seen in 3 to 4 patients, which is more than usual, I think that would raise the suspicion of possible outbreak. So surveillance by the doctor becomes the most important step. And once an organism is identified, I think the healthcare personnel should ascertain whether it's airborne, waterborne, surface contamination, or equipment. So this will help him to try to cohort the patients and take necessary steps to contain. So with regards to outbreak investigations, there are 4 steps. So first, he needs to understand the baseline rate of cases and the number of cases that are happening to determine that outbreak has happened. There are 4 steps. The first step is epidemiological methods. So cohorting the patients and case control sort of an approach to determine if outbreak has happened. And he needs to create epidemiological curve and look at the case links and the cascading of the diseases that may be happening to determine potential outbreak that may have happened. Then the second investigation is microbiological studies, the conventional cultures. If the cultures are showing similar resistant pattern, so that would tell you that possibly an outbreak with this particular, like Acinetobacter, if it is a MDR Acinetobacter, or if it is a carbapenem resistant Acinetobacter, then if that has happened in 3 4 patients within the in the same area, then you would probably qualify it as a possible outbreak when the strains are the same. And antimicrobial susceptibility. So these two would indicate that there is a similar strain causing infection in multiple patients, and you would call it as a possible outbreak. And the third step is molecular strain or typing. So this can happen with your PCR and hybridization technique to again ascertain the genetic variant of the organism, or gene sequencing or multilocus sequencing technique. So these are all the molecular techniques which are used to determine the strain, the genetic trait of the organism, to call it as an outbreak. And serological testing to look at the extent and risk factor for the outbreak that has happened. So these are the 4 methods that are utilized in tandem to determine the outbreak, to investigate the outbreak. So now we'll move into the next domain, which is outbreak prevention and control. So there are 7 steps involved in outbreak detection. So the step one is to, as soon as an outbreak is recognized, I think the first question that should arise is whether this patient needs isolation. So you would isolate the patient who you think is a potential risk for transmitting the infection. And this can be a patient who has colonized with MDR bugs, who is neutropenic, or who has any skin lesions, vesicular skin lesions like varicella zoster or chickenpox, which has a potential to spread. Or if he has a chronic diarrhea due to infective organisms like Clostridium. So these are some of the reasons that you would ascertain to determine if they need isolation. The step 2 is to determine what type of isolation is needed. So there are 2 types of isolation. It's a positive pressure ventilation. Positive pressure ventilation is adopted in neutropenic patients or immunosuppressed, where we call it as reverse barrier nursing. So positive pressure is generally recommended for this category. Negative pressure isolation is suggested for any infected patients where there is possible aerosol spread or droplet infections. So you would consider negative pressure isolation. The third step is to identify the patient with all the risk factors for vulnerability of the disease. So any ICU patient would typically have one or many of these risk factors. So any ICU patient connected to ventilator is a risk, having CVC or catheter is a risk, or someone who is in obtended state becomes a risk for being vulnerable for the outbreak. and someone who is reintubated, frequent changing of the tube, duration of mechanical ventilation, malnutrition, and post-surgical patients, alcohol, or end organ disease like COPD, trauma, liver failure, diabetes, renal failure, bed-bound status, and any patient who is on long-term antibiotics, corticosteroids, H2. So this is just I put in a pictorial format for you to remember. There are around 14 risk factors, and combination of any of these risk factors constitutes a patient to be vulnerable for a outbreak. So he has to be cohorted and tried to be separated from an infected patient. So that is the reason we need to identify vulnerable patient. So step 4 is observing hand hygiene. So I think this is very important. You need to understand that hand hygiene is needed at every step you come in contact with the patient. Before touching the patient, you need to clean your hands. And after you have done some procedure exposed to fluid, you have to clean your hands. And after body fluid exposure, you have to clean your hands. And after touching patient, you should clean your hands. And even after touching any of the environmental surface in contact with the patient, one has to clean it. So this is a 5 areas where you should reiterate in your mind that hand washing or hand cleaning would be important at every step. Before procedure, after procedure, before touching, after touching, and in contact with the surroundings. So step 4 is observing hand hygiene. How do you observe hand hygiene? It is recommended that you clean the hands for at least 15 seconds or more. After washing, you have to wipe it dry with the tissue paper and then again clean with chlorhexidine to sanitize the hands. And these are the steps. I'm sure many of the listeners would be aware of the proper technique of hand washing. And step 5 is to have all the universal precautions, which is gowns, gloves, and eye masks, and other appropriate measures. So gloves have, as soon as gloves have to be utilized for examining any patient who is a potential where there is increased potential of infection or the risk of infection. And after examining such an infected patient, the gloves has to be promptly removed and discarded. So and again cleaned with chlorhexidine. And gown also the same thing applies. So you need to wear a sterile gown before examining an infected patient. And after examining the patient, the gown has to be immediately removed and discarded. And again, wearing eye protection or face shield and mask. So this is also extremely important before you are coming in contact with the infected patient. And appropriately discarding all these infected clothing or infected gloves or infected mask in a suitable places is very important. And any of these instruments that are contaminated with the infected patients has to be carefully handled and appropriately cleaned, and it has to be appropriately sterilized. Any of the instruments that are used for the infected patient, and it has to, and the sharps has to be disposed in the sharp bins. So step 6 is airborne precautions. So these are the typical conditions we see which cause airborne: tuberculosis, chickenpox, varicella, herpes zoster, and rubella. So all these patients which are a potential for airborne infection needs negative pressure isolation and N95 mask to be used to prevent droplet spread of this infection. So step 6 is contact precautions. So any direct or indirect contact with the infected patient has to be curtailed as much as possible. And the infections that mandate contact precautions are all these: hepatitis A, cholera, rotavirus, varicella zoster, herpes. So all these need contact isolation, and varicella zoster, herpes zoster also needs airborne precautions, and they also need isolation. And their transport to any within the hospital or intra ICU has to be limited to prevent the spread. And the circuits that are used in ventilator has to be single use, and they should not be reused when it is in contact with the infected patients. So step 7, which is the last step, is to take specific measures to reduce a specific condition, like strategies to prevent aspiration. So you could use supraglottic suction to prevent aspiration, and strategies to reduce colonization of aerodigestive tract can happen by effective chlorhexidine mouth cleaning, and strategies to minimize contamination of equipment used to care for patients requiring mechanical ventilation, which again is by proper surface cleaning and discarding and trying to use as much as single use circuits. So these are some of the specific strategies to curtail the spread of infection, and certain steps to prevent aspiration and spread within the patient. So now we'll move to the specific outbreaks. So I think I will talk about 8 specific outbreaks, the cause for the outbreak, the pathogen that was involved, and the intervention they put in place. So this was a study from Saudi Arabia, Al Dorzi et al. In 2016. So the cause for the outbreak was overcrowding and movement of patient, and the pathogen involved was MER, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, coronavirus, and lack of adoption of infection control measures was the cause. So MERV was the organisms, and what was the intervention they did? So they re-emphasized and put in stringent infection control measures and isolation of the patient. So that was the intervention they used to mitigate the spread. Stock et al. This was a Czechoslovakian study, ZEC study that came in 2016. The cause for outbreak was reduced nursing patient ratio. So as you know, that can be an important reason even within our India to cause these outbreaks. The pathogen that was involved was MRSA because of reduced patient nurse patient ratio. So the interventions, they didn't report interventions in their study. So this was a Irish study by O'Connor et al. In 2015. The cause for specific outbreak was overusage of antibiotics. I think this is an important problem in Indian subcontinent also. So overusage of antibiotics, you should bear in mind that it can lead to specific outbreaks. The pathogens that were involved was all MDR organisms, MDR Pseudomonas, MDR Acinetobacter, and Klebsiella and Serratia. And the interventions they adopted was to restrict usage of antibiotics. Salm F et al. So this was a German study in 2016. The cause for this was contaminated sinks, and the pathogen that caused the problem was Pseudomonas because it's a waterborne. So I think Pseudomonas outbreak happened due to contamination of these sinks. So what was the intervention? They changed the trap, sink trap, emphasized on hand hygiene measures, nurse education, and since this water was involved in contaminating the dialysate bags, they used single-use ultrafiltrate bags. Han et al. Chinese in 2016, the cause was laminar flow units between the ICUs which were contaminated. So, and the organism that was involved was extreme drug resistant Acinetobacter. So, the interventions they did was surface cleaning or environmental decontamination and emphasizing on infection control measures. So this was a Dutch study, Van Beurden et al. That came in 2016. The cause for outbreak was they were using colistin selective digestive decontamination. So there was a overusage of colistin. So the pathogen that caused the problem was Clostridium difficile. So the intervention they adopted is to use antimicrobial stewardship and incorporation of infection control measures. Alongst with it, optimizing the diagnosis of Clostridium difficile and treating it effectively. So this was the interventions they reported. Perkins et al. In 2016, like the Swiss study, the cause was heater-cooler device in cardiothoracic unit, and the pathogen involved was Mycobacteria chimera. So what they did was intervention is they removed this and they separated it from direct contact with the areas which would be exposed to this bacteria. Little et al. In 2015, the cause was inadequate equipment available and education or sensitization about the disease. The pathogen that was involved was Ebola virus. So the interventions they adopted is whole body suits to prevent the spread and reinforcing your infection control strategies. So the take-home message. So whatever literature you read, I think the take-home message, the French et al. They collated 7 studies and they tried to look at the best possible evidence that one could look at to mitigate or curtail the outbreak. So if you remember this slide at the end of it, I think this is all it is to curtail the outbreak. So what are they? Surveillance. Most important is for the doctor to be sensitive in appreciating that there is a potential outbreak. I think the first step is surveillance and identification there is a possible outbreak. Second is cohorting this patient and the treating staff who may be infected, cohorting in one space and trying to assign that area, saying that these are the patients which are infected, and contact precautions. The third step is most important is as soon as you cohort the patients, contact precautions has to be adopted to prevent the spread of the infection and to prevent the outbreak. And fourth important step is isolation. appropriate isolation. If it is immunosuppressed, put them in a positive pressure. If there is a risk of droplet infection, they have to be put in negative pressure isolation. The fifth step, most important, is surface decontamination. So surface cleaning and sanitizing the whole environment by effective surface cleaning becomes an important fifth step. And the sixth step is good patient education, the nurse education, patient education, and all the treating professionals being educated about the steps to be put in place about the disease and the preventive measures that needs to be adopted. And seventh important step is your hand reinforcing and re-emphasizing on the hand hygiene and minimizing the hand contact with the infected patients. And the last but not the least is antimicrobial stewardship. So these are, as you see, 8 steps. Along with this, the newer step that they have adopted is having this infectious disease emergency response plan. So as soon as an outbreak is recognized, there should be a team that is activated, and there should be a protocol put in place as to how to tackle this, and some document in the form of infectious disease emergency response plan has to be put in place is what is suggested. So these are around 9 steps. So if you incorporate, if you have good clarity on these 9 steps, is all that takes to prevent the outbreak. So I'll end my talk with this quote. So an outbreak is a sad way to get people's attention. So our whole effort is not to tackle outbreak, but rather to prevent outbreak. So thank you very much. Visit my website www.drpradeeprangappa.com to rehear to this lecture to gain clarity and insights. Thank you.